Several IT organizations were interested in my distributed systems optimization undergraduate thesis, and by the time I graduated I had received 5 job offers. A part of me still hoped that things may improve, so I picked a promising company in Boston. In part because it was near home. I was in charge of my own development team within 2 years, and by the 5th year, I was the youngest senior developer in the company's history. My folks were too busy assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to really understand what I did for a job. 4 years ago at a tiny coffee shop close to my workplace, the real turning point in my life occurred. Amy and I met there. While completing her teaching degree, she was working as a barista. She somehow managed to recall each regular's order as well as a personal characteristic. She acknowledged that she had been writing encouraging notes on my coffee cups for weeks before she eventually consented to go out with me. I hadn't even noticed because I had been so focused on my task. 6 hours were spent on our first date. We discussed everything, including our families, anxieties, and dreams. She seems to genuinely get my family's problems. When I informed her about my early years, she responded, "They're blind. They have no idea what they were missing." I felt like I was being seen for the first time. The following year seemed unreal. We prepared extravagant meals together, spent weekends discovering Boston's hidden bookstores, and went trekking in New Hampshire. She pushed me to go for a big promotion at work, helped me get ready for the interviews, and celebrated my success more than anybody else. She shed joyful tears when I asked her to marry me after 14 months, saying she had been hoping I would. At the time, I believed our wedding was tiny and ideal. When my family arrived, they talked about Jake's new job opportunity in California for the whole of the reception. In order to show everyone a text message from Jake regarding his second interview, Mom actually cut short Amy's father's toast. In hindsight, I should have recognized it as a warning flag, but Amy dismissed it with a laugh, stating that she thought their commitment to Jake was sweet. Our marriage was everything I could have imagined for 3 years. We began discussing starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and took trips when we could. Amy made our house feel like the cozy, caring home I never had as a child by decorating it with pictures of our travels and planting a little container garden on our balcony. We were a team, she constantly asserted. She would remark, "Us against the world." Then Jake got in touch last year. After failing to succeed in California due to the startup culture not being his vibe, he returned to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email in which he expressed his longing for his older brother and his desire to mend our relationship after growing up. He wrote, "Families should stick together." After a week of contemplation, Amy urged me to give him a chance. "People evolve," she stated. "Perhaps they've come to terms with their losses." I decided to go out to supper with Jake against my better judgment. Although awkward, the first meeting showed promise. Jake seems to have grown up and become more self-aware. He stated he wanted to make atonement and acknowledged that he had had it easy as a child. A week later, I introduced him to Amy, and they clicked right away. Too well, as I would learn later. Everything appeared to be ideal at first. A couple of times a week, Jake would stop by for dinner. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine and entertained us with tales of his exploits in California. He even stood up for me when our parents began showing their customary partiality at Sunday dinners. In fact, I began to think that we might be biological brothers. Subtly, however, things began to change. Jake started unexpectedly visiting our home, sometimes while I was still at work. While she graded papers, Amy stated they were simply hanging out and that it was good to have company. He would remain for supper and use my coffee mug while chatting with my wife and making inside jokes. I chose to overlook the warning signs, which included their sudden silence when I walked into a room, Amy's phone abruptly turning to the side when I sat next to her, their knowing glances at dinner, and their coincidental meetings at the coffee shop or grocery store. The announcement of the pregnancy followed. We were eating dinner at home. Naturally, Jake was present when Amy broke the news. Although I was ecstatic, Jake's response ought to have told me everything. He was not in the least bit surprised. Rather, he smiled with a knowing satisfaction that made my stomach flip. Jake was there all the time after that. He would talk about how active he would be in our child's life, touch Amy's stomach without asking, and make remarks about the baby's future. Despite my efforts to organize a romantic baby moon trip, hubby inadvertently invited himself. He said, "The baby needs both of us," and Amy concurred. I still remember the night I found out. I had been lying awake, mentally reliving months of dubious events. Amy was on the nightstand charging her phone while she slept peacefully next to me. I had never once looked at her phone in our 6 years together. I was a believer in trust and privacy. But I had a need to know something. They had hundreds of communications dating back 6 months. While I was at work, we had secret meetings in hotels. Plans for their future together. Conversations about the infant, their infant. Soon after he returned to my life, they had begun sharing a bed. They had intended to tell me after the baby was born, assuming that I would be too attached to the child to leave, therefore the pregnancy wasn't an accident. I felt my world come crashing down, message by message, as I read every single message till dawn. I was seated in our reading chair with Amy's phone in my hand when she woke up. She was immediately aware of what I had found. She sobbed, "We didn't intend for this to occur. Jake and I simply clicked. He knows me better than you ever could." In fact, she spoke the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. "We were going to tell you, but we didn't want to worry you after I became pregnant." I called my parents that morning in the hopes that they would finally support me. I was astounded by their answer. Mom said, "Jake made a mistake, but he's going to be a father now. You must forgive him and act like the bigger person. Consider the infant. Consider the grandchild that was produced when their younger son was having an affair with the wife of their older son. They were also protecting him. Once more. There are some things that never change." That day, I called a divorce attorney and checked into a hotel. Amy took turns pleading for my pardon and condemning me for deserting our family. At work, Jake attempted to corner me by claiming that we needed to have a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through a divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claimed their affair started because of my emotional unavailability, portraying me as domineering and emotionally abusive. According to my parents' testimony, I had always been difficult, and had lifelong jealousy of Jake. Mom even blamed the mediator for the entire problem, saying that I should have been more considerate of Jake's demands. After that, I stopped negotiating. After we went to court, Amy managed to get a respectable settlement. It seems that in Massachusetts, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small successes though, like preserving the condo and the majority of my pay. I am currently 34 years old, divorced and totally estranged from my family. I've changed my email, blacklisted their numbers, and told building security to never let them in. On certain days I find myself questioning whether there is any way I could have avoided this. If I'd been a better spouse, brother or son. However, I later realized that I wasn't the one who deceived everyone. Turning family against family was not something I did. It's said that everyone eventually experiences karma. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I do know that I'm sick of being the family's scapegoat. Having to be understanding when everyone else gets away with ruining lives is something I'm tired of. I've lived my entire life as the one who is passed over, the second best option, and the afterthought. No more. However, just when I believed that things couldn't get much worse, they were about to get even more bizarre. Update 1. I assumed my family would finally leave me alone when I stopped communicating with them after the divorce. About a month has passed since everything happened, and I've been making an effort to concentrate on getting better and moving on. However, it seems that they had different ideas. When our office receptionist messaged me yesterday morning while I was in the middle of an important meeting with my development team, she said that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby and insisted on seeing me. She reportedly spent more than an hour there, telling everyone she just needed to talk to her son. Since my team had seen Jake's prior incident at work, they could tell how uneasy I was. After ignoring her and carrying on with my job, my phone began to ring with calls from unidentified numbers. It seems that my mother had enlisted a number of family members to attempt to contact me. I thought it might be work-related when I finally answered one phone, but it was my Aunt Linda, 54F, with whom I hadn't spoken in years. Not even bothering to say hello, she began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found a job, and the settlement money is running low. Well, no one wants to hire him after that." Jake's reputation appears to have been ruined by his affair with Amy, which somehow made its way into his professional network. After doing background checks, a number of prospective employers withdrew their offers. I couldn't help but notice the irony. For once, his actions had tangible repercussions. This is where it becomes ridiculous though. In addition to purchasing groceries and paying their rent, my parents have also been paying for Amy's prenatal medical expenses. My father's retirement funds are being depleted and they are now in a panic as they run out of money themselves. Their remedy. They want me to provide financial assistance for the woman who deceived me and the brother who ruined my marriage. My mother didn't just show up at my office, she had a plan. She chose to ambush me at work since she knew I wouldn't return their calls. After threatening to stay until closing time, she launched into a prepared speech on forgiveness and family responsibilities when I eventually made my way down to the lobby to handle the problem. She easily forgot that I had to pay for my own college education when she remarked, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you